You're watching Capital Connection from the Illinois State Capitol.
Welcome back. We now turn to our Reporters Roundtable, and joining us this week, it's Brendan Moore with Lee Enterprises and Jerry Nowicki with Capital News Illinois. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Always a pleasure, Cole.
So, Labor Day, the week after Labor Day, that's often seen as the, I guess, de facto start of the campaign trail of the campaign season going into November, at least for the more local races. Obviously, we've been hearing about the presidential campaign all summer. But I wanted to talk to you guys more about those statewide races, those more localized races across Illinois here. Let's start with the congressional side, because it seemed like, at least in 2022, we had the two congressional races that everybody was looking at. You had Sorensen, you had Budzinski, and those races. Budzinski seems kind of solid right now. She's got the money backing her now, and obviously the map favoring her. But Brendan, you're kind of up there in the Sorensen territory too. That seems to be a pretty big one with the fate of the majority of the House in the balance there.
Yeah, so Illinois 17, which stretches from Bloomington to Peoria to the Quad Cities to Rockford, gets a lot of those urban areas in northwest and central Illinois, is really the only battleground in Illinois. You have freshman Rep. Eric Sorensen up there. He won the race by 4 percentage points in 2022. It is a single-digit district in terms of President Biden, what he got there in 2020. Republicans spent a lot of money there in 2022. This year they had trouble recruiting a candidate initially. A lot of elected officials in the district took a pass. They eventually landed on retired Judge Joe McGraw, who seems to be doing fine as a candidate, but in terms of his messaging, but he has struggled to raise money. He's being vastly outspent by Congressman Sorensen, and the National Republicans have yet to spend money on that race. So last time it was about, I think, $6 or $7 million in outside money between the super PACs and the House Republican leadership PACs, and this time we just haven't seen that yet. And when you talk to some people working in Republican politics, they will tell you that the House majority will likely be won on the coast. It'll be won in those suburban districts in New York. It'll be won in some of those districts in California. So Illinois is, in some of these Midwestern districts, have kind of been flyover country so far in terms of Republican attention. But, there's still 2 months left until Election Day, so that could change pretty quickly. But for now, that's the most competitive race, and it's not looking, it's looking close-ish, but not. Sorensen is definitely the favorite going into Election Day.
Yeah, and Jerry, that's been interesting too, because really the primary for at least the southern district there with the Bost-Bailey race was the big Republican race in the primary. But now going into November with this lack of, I guess, fervent competition there, it'll be interesting to see how everybody kind of falls in line with the top of the ticket or maybe lower bottom of the ticket races there. Obviously, Republicans are going to be supporting Trump. Democrats are going to be supporting Biden. And we've seen that those Republican areas of the state, LaHood, Bost, and Mary Miller, just kind of fall in line hard there. And it'll be interesting to watch their rhetoric going into the November elections.
Yeah, in many ways, it's just kind of a product of Democratic map making, right? They just drew it so that the red districts are super red and that the blue districts are blue enough to where you just have this overwhelming Democratic majority in terms of the representatives we're sending to Congress. So, what we're seeing last election, this election, is that Democrats are pretty good at map making.
Let's shift over to more of those state-centric races then, just to talk more about that, because obviously some of that map making has led to some of it has led to the supermajorities we see for the chambers here in the state capitol. Some of it has just been a byproduct of the past few years of politics in Illinois. But we saw a lot of optimism, I guess, but also some humbleness from Republicans, especially at the state fair a couple weeks ago. They were talking a lot about where they need to go next, how they need to go back to get that foothold in Illinois. And we've heard a lot from House Republican leader Toni McCombie. She's been the one that's really been, I guess, calling her shot in a way. She keeps saying 5 seats. That's what they're looking for. That would still keep her far from a majority in the House of Representatives, but that's still the number she stuck to pretty much all summer since last spring. And Brendan, we know a few of those races they're really targeting, but there's still some areas that they're going to want to hold on to. They're going to be fighting to hold on to in these November elections.
Yeah, Leader McCombie's been very clear-eyed about this from the outset. She knows that she's in a deep hole and that they're not going to get out of it in one election cycle. So, she set the bar at 5 seats, which would get them to 70 or to 45, which would still leave them 3 short of breaking the supermajority, the Democratic supermajority. But even that is going to be really difficult because Republicans hold 7 seats that were won by President Biden and Governor Pritzker in their last elections. There are a couple of opportunities where they could maybe go on offense. There's the 45th House District up in suburban Chicago, which is represented by freshman Jen Ladish Douglas. She's retiring, so that's an open seat. Lance Yednock in the Illinois Valley, DeKalb area is retiring. He's a moderate Democrat, and Republicans think they can make that competitive. So you have a few opportunities there where they might be able to win some of these open seats. But even then, they are defending all of those seats where they have incumbents in districts that where the top of the ticket, the Democrat won. And then they have some districts again, where they're playing defense. I mean, down in the Danville area, appointed Rep. Brandon Schweizer has a tough race against Democrat Jarrett Clem, who has a lot of union money behind him. And then obviously down in the Metro East, Kevin Schmidt, who won kind of a shock race last time against Rep. Latoya Greenwood in Metro East-based seat, East St. Louis-based seat. She's running again, and the Democrats are probably going to throw a lot of money into that race. So it's really hard to find where Leader McCombie gets her 5 seats. I mean, maybe they pick up a seat or 2, but what's the net going to be? Because they're just playing defense in so many places, not just in suburban Chicago, where obviously former President Trump is not very popular, where abortion is going to be a very big issue as it was in 2022. But some of these downstate districts where Democrats have as Jerry said, drawn a map where they have opportunities in places where maybe they otherwise would not.
Yeah, that Schweizer seat in particular, Brendan, is one I got an eye on, just because for those that don't know, Schweizer is the one that took over for Representative Mike Marin, who had held the seat for a little bit. He took over in the middle of the term as Marin retired. And you mentioned the union money that is behind his opponent, but there's also just been this sentiment of some changing political demographics in that area in particular that I think could lead to some change, that could lead to some surprises there. I know that Republicans are wary of that, and they know that that's not a walk that they're really looking towards there. The 5 seats idea, Brendan, you mentioned, it still doesn't even break the supermajority there. Mm-hmm. You mentioned it's hard to find where those 5 seats are. It's also hard to imagine a potential snowball effect after that, I guess, because that's kind of what McCombie is talking about as well with that 5 seats, is the sense of momentum for her party, Jerry. And it's hard to imagine with just the way that Illinois is shaping up and just the way that Illinois reacts to those national politics that are at the front of the scene, specifically the Trump ticket, specifically the suburbs and how they're looking at that, where the snowball really gets into without a pretty significant change in Republican Party dynamics.
Right. So one thing Leader McCombie has also said is that the most important thing, even kind of regardless of numbers, is just a good showing in this election, because then you might entice a good governor candidate 2 years down the line in the next election to maybe lift the boats or whatever. So it is, as Brendan said, a long-term view on it, kind of, but they're still facing all these challenging realities of being the minority party in Illinois, namely the maps. But the other side of the coin that we really haven't touched on is that Speaker Welch has also said he thinks that he can push his caucus over 80 members, which would just be patently absurd, but not out of the realm of possibility, really. just with the way they're funded, the way they're organized, and the way the maps are drawn, just to be able to continue to cement Illinois as a blue stronghold.
And you mentioned, I mean, we talked about the maps off the top and what those, what the byproducts of those are. We're still not even halfway through the life cycle for these maps. There's still probably some effects that haven't even bore out yet, and that could be where those extra few seats really jump in there.
Yeah, I mean, the Democrats drew a good map, at least at the legislative level. Congressional, they were a little bit sloppy, so you maybe in a good Republican year nationally, they can pick up a seat or two. But legislatively, they pretty much locked it down. It's going to be very difficult, and we haven't even touched upon the Senate. There's really not a lot of competitive races in the Senate this year. You're not really hearing Senate Republican leaders talk a whole lot because, I mean, what are their targets? Maybe you can go throw some money at Patrick Joyce, a moderate Democrat from a moderate district just south of Chicago. You know, maybe you go again after Senator Michael Hastings, who had some personal issues in the last cycle that made his race close. But again, there's just not a lot of fertile ground there for Republicans, at least this cycle.
All right. Brendan, Jerry, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Always a pleasure.
We'll be right back.